I just want to have a chat to you. I want to pick your brains. I want to...
It's scary.
Scary. It is scary with a mind like yours. No. I think
it is scary.
It's a bit scary.
Exciting and scary.
So I guess I sort of sent you some stuff about the premise. I just want to have a chat. I just want to... You're a prominent person in our community and see the world in a unique way, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, got to have a chat with you.
Yeah.
So you're happy just to roll in and
go for it.
If there's any
you just
topics, it's all can be edited. I can send it to you before it goes live.
You cut anything out that you think was totally irrelevant, because I can go there too. You know that. So if it's if you think no, wait, hang on, why did we talk about trees?
Could be 12 minutes or an hour.
Yeah,
I don't mind.
Yeah,
what time?
I won't be offended if
3:03. You've got a 4:15. 4:15.
Oh, you say again? I need to leave in the. You've got about an hour and 15.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's not the biggest meeting not to be downtime. So
you want to be late.
It's one of those that you say yes to the client that it's not actually the type of work you need to do or want to do, but it's a client that you've done that you know for 20 years, or a friend you know for 20 years. Anyway,
like my work when I call you, you could say yes.
No. Yeah,
because you told me that on the phone.
At least, no, it's
that's funny.
No.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So when you meet someone for the first time, Colin, and they say, "Oh, nice to meet you. What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
I think we've as even in growing up in South Africa, and I think it's very similar to Australia, as where you sort of say the same thing. You just say. All good without even thinking. I don't think that's even not even there's no contemplation of thinking about it. You just say all good and you, and that's a South African thing as I grew up too. So it's never been different. So that's obviously the typical request or response. But I try and actually live as much as I can by that and saying that, and not just lying in theory about it. Because even if you're not, in that position where you are all good, there is so many other things that are good around you. So there may be that little mindset or the problem at work. Yeah, it pushes you in a emotional state for that moment where you're not good. But in theory, that might just be irrelevant because you are actually good. You are breathing. Your kids are happy and healthy. Those sort of things. Yeah.
What about when someone? Did you think I asked what do you do when someone asks you, are you good? I meant to ask, how would you answer the question, what do you do? As in, for your job or work or how do you classify that as for yourself?
First, I'm formally a registered architect, but I actually normally say to people directly, I'm an architect, but I don't like to be classified as an architect. So I don't see me as an architect. Tags and degrees and everything that really means nothing. What can you do? And even so if I would talk to people in the first moment, especially people I've never met, and that happens quite often where people get referred or see some of our work and call up. It's just trying to be a human and not just be an element to provide something at the end of it. Because everything is so personal and so non-black and white in our world, in a building and a construction and a design and a livability world, because we touch on everything in how people live. So it's just almost trying to not be the formal person and beyond about the ability to be the formal person. Yeah.
Is it insulting to call you a design architect?
No, that's probably a compliment. It's probably a compliment. Because
it's the name of your business too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Design architecture.
Yeah, and that's the whole story of how we got to that name, to oddly keep it as generic as possible. So when from people just literally going on Google and doing a Google search, because those two words probably would come up somewhere in their search, you would think already. Right up to the idea of being humble about who you are, because there's too many people in my industry, in old school, especially old school industry, that are John or Jack Smith architect. That's their name of their business. I'm like, you are keeping it more generic, because it's also not just about me. It's not about what I think. When I started, it was just me, but today with 3 of us, hopefully never 10 of us, but let's say we would, whatever it is, it's not about us. It's not about me, it's about us. So it's a business, it's not me. And I always knew I had to start that from the beginning, and not 10 years later wake up and like, oh crap, now everybody thinks it's just me. But it is actually 2 other people that does the same work, and so forth. So it's always trying to think ahead, and not just what happens today. And that's probably been engraved and pushed into me from an early age too, and probably makes me a little bit different too, and very good at my job too, is to think beyond today, because that's literally what we do.
So what is design?
What is design? That's a good question, because anybody can really design. You don't need, again, that formality of degree or paperwork or even experience. If you and we all design in a million ways. A chef, for me, a good chef or somebody dealing with food can theoretically design a great meal. Right up to, and if I come back to construction and buildings and layouts, it's probably the ability to create something that somebody needs. And in my world, it is normally as some level of space or some level of space, building, house, refuge. But space is probably, it's a very generic word to use, but it's probably the right word, because if you go in the outdoor world, or it's not a building. So if you're doing a boardwalk, it's still somehow space. It's this, and it's the experience. And good design is creating the experience with that. So anybody can design, anybody can draw a line on a page, but I think creating experience, that's the difference. And we strive for that. I strive for that. It's not saying we're the best at it, but we strive for that, because experience makes a one house or one room with no experience different to the one with experience. And they could have costed the same amount of money, same amount of time, could have gotten into them, but then that experience, and that's another big generic word, could make you have a better day. So going back to what you asked me before about, if you meet people, whatever, saying yes or no, and I'm having a good day, I strongly believe that even the color of our walls, and if a wall's setting a bit to the left or the right, and a very, very minute degree or a little bit of percentage actually affects your day and your emotions. So doing that in a negative way could push you a little bit more into your not having a good day, and obviously pushing it in a slightly better way could making you actually feel better in a minute way, and you don't even realize it. So that all plays a role. Good design plays a role. And that's, again, not just buildings. It goes straight down to graphics and you name it.
Is that where you find meaning in your work, making the world a better place through making it a more enjoyable place to be?
Yeah, I actually spoke to somebody about it last week, and it's I think as much as I think I'm humble, and I think we all, some of us with some level of life expectancy and maybe faith, consider ourselves and we are, want to be humble. But as much as anybody's humble, I think everybody still has some level of ego. That's us. That's humans. That probably makes us different from animals. We have some level of ego. So a part of that small ego, big ego, depends on how you look at it, wants to create and leave something behind. So that the idea of leaving something there that after you leave, it's still there. And that's maybe in a physical way. But I think the bigger thing that drives me is to leave something behind in an experience way. So it doesn't have to be flash, doesn't have to be shiny. It's when we're done with a project, if it's a small house addition or it's a boardwalk, 5 years later, 2 months later, doesn't matter. Is that space creating, leaving something behind for somebody and creating hopefully a positive effect on their lives. So that creating that positiveness in whatever you do in that experience world. Yeah. But
it's interesting.
yeah, and it goes. But last week I had a chat with a colleague architect of mine, and realizing again that even as much as that's seemingly the focus and the drive, that what we just discussed, actually the process is sometimes even more important. So sitting with people, just going through sometimes months, let us say years, it has happened, to get to a design resolution for their house. So that process and working with those people and spending time with them, and a lot of times becoming pretty good friends and really getting into their world, that's probably even more rewarding, especially if you somehow can sense how you shape and change their mind and attitude to how they live, how they think they were living, and how they might be living after you leave their world again and leave them in their spaces. So that process in the last couple of months or weeks was really realizing it's even more important than the actual leaving the physical building or space behind afterwards.
Yeah, I make sure that's recorded. Yeah. I think there's something powerful in that. Legacy extends beyond. I think it does go beyond just ego in that it's through the work we do, the contributions we make to the world, the family that we raise. Yeah. That's our legacy.
Yeah.
And I think it's important we think about that, because I had a really good conversation with someone recently about, discussing problems in the world and where those were coming from. And the more I think about those things, I think it's just people being selfish. It's people thinking about themselves, thinking short term, and thinking and living a self-serving life.
Yeah.
When if we can think beyond that and contribute to something.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on something really powerful there. It's the process that's sometimes as rewarding as the result.
Yep.
I think we get
the
journey, and there's a lot of talk about that, and we get so goal focused and all these things, but it's the process of doing, not the process of achieving, that we should try and find.
Yeah, and that what you said before about selfishness and living for yourself is that's a big conversation, isn't it? Because that's probably one of the biggest, I would say, personally of problems in our society for the last years, and it's just getting more and more, and it's about me instead of and we know what that all means, and it's the same with the ego. We all have that in us. We're born with that sense, but do we act on it, and do we try and control it, or do we try and just let it go? And I've been told by so many wise people, and it might even be Bluey's dad, but that as soon as you start giving, I think that's the joy of life. A good big part of the joy of life too is in giving yourself your time, whatever that means. So the opposite of selfishness is actually where part of the reward of life comes from, isn't it? Yep.
Powerful. Bluey, great show.
Hi. So my 6-year-old is still highly into Bluey, so at least two episodes a day. Yeah, between my making breakfast and going to work.
I saw something written the other day from the BBC, because it's big in the US and big in the UK as well.
I think it's the biggest high streaming show in the US at the moment.
Yeah, and it was some 63-year-old man or woman, I'm not sure, had commented on something online about how they watch it, because it's they get to relive experiences from their childhood, and it makes
nostalgia.
It makes them miss their grandkids, and it's
nostalgia, and there's so many little, obviously, life lessons ingrained into a kid's story. So especially a lot of adults I know would not say they watch it, but we all know they do.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
How do you work with? I would classify you as an artist.
Yep. Oh, that's a big word. Yeah. Thank you.
I think what you create is art. I think the work that I create, making something from nothing, is technically art.
Yeah.
I think when you view it that way, you can take criticism of your work without taking it personally, and I think that
you should. Yeah.
You should.
Yeah, not somebody. Some people don't.
How do you deal with subjectivity in art?
And we are very much on the front line of that because a lot of our work is public, and everybody, all these keyboard warriors on Facebook jump up and go crazy of their thoughts in 2 a.m, probably after a couple of beers, I imagine. So it's interesting, or not even the beers, but so it is something you need to. It's not something I think we are born with and are used to. I mean, look at a 4-year-old losing a snap game at home. Never happy about it. Always want to win. Always want to win. We're born with that. I think we're born with wanting to always only achieve the best, and everybody should think it's also the best. The artwork our kids make at home, and we also as parents encourage them to think it's great, which is great. That's part of our life, but somewhere we also, and I don't know what's that magical age, but somewhere we have to start also learning, or either as parents teaching our kids, or we just need to teach ourselves that we are not always making the best for everybody. We can't keep everybody happy. Art, I believe that we do art in our own way, and anybody that creates, as you say, I definitely believe that, even cooking or you name it. But being in a very public world, it does sometimes hit you a little bit. But you grow up, and hopefully you grow up and get a bit of a thicker skin. Good example, the drive-through project up the road, the Kookaburra Express. Sure, there was a lot of comments on that on Facebook when it came out the first time. Any images of it? Very different than any other drive-through that's ever really been done, especially in Rocky. A lot of positive ones too, but a couple that was which was a bit funny actually. One of them was stating it looked like half a church, and I asked, "Where's the other half of the church?" That was like one of the comment, and that sort of stuck, and many other people started commenting on that, stating, they're going to have a coffee at the church. And so it became this whole interesting church-related chats and I'm just observing this, and the tenants are observing it, and the owners observing it, and whatever. And, I think my first initial personal, emotional response in my head was, it's a bit negative. But it's also taking that negative and turning it around and taking it, cool, yep, now we'll embrace that. We'll embrace that idea of being whatever somebody else thought was negative. And now we're building the second one in Yeppoon. It's now sort of, let's call it a franchise, so it's very similar, pretty much the same design. So we're almost now putting a slogan out there, we are now building the other half of the church. So it's somehow, trying to absorb, and that if there's negativity your way, and turning it around, because you're never going to keep everybody happy. But at the end of the day, I think we all shouldn't have that viewpoint when it comes to being in a professional capacity. Is my client happy? Are we achieving what we wanted to achieve as a team, between the client, ourselves, builders, consultants? Are we in my world? Are we? What was that scope? What was the wish list? What do they want? Did we achieve that? And by the way, did we create hopefully a sense of everlasting, hopefully positive experience without the client even knowing? So could you weave that in without them even knowing, or could you weave it in the middle of the process, and before you know it, they buy into it and they think it was their idea, and we're all literally pushing the project further than it would have been, and hopefully, again, for the positive.
Pretty standard, not really hearing, there'll be 100 people who like it and one who doesn't, and you'll hear from the one who doesn't. Keyboard warrior.
Yeah, what are we focusing on, the one or the 1,000?
Yeah.
And also, should we care about the one or the 1,000 too? Did you do everything you could? How was that process? How's your relationship with your client? How's your relationship at home? Why are you doing that all? Be 12 hours at work and we're not at home at the same time. There's so many other deep layers of what we do and what we achieve. And does it actually even matter all at the same time?
Can you take us through that process without giving away your secret?
There's no secret. There's no secret.
I'll just move that forward a little bit. What is that design process like for you? What do you talked about you want to create an experience.
Yep.
It could be a commercial project or residential project. How do you approach that from a thought point of view? And I'm interested.
So I think It's a good one because it's not always, it's never the same. Obviously people are all different. We deal with different people, even though we do exactly the same type of project, but still not always never the same, even for the same client if we did a repetitive type of project. But it's really, I think for me, it's really just, I remember when I grew up, there was a movie or a series in the old days when series was not that big yet, but I think it was called The Pretender. It was this guy that was just this phenomenal, smart, and he was just almost like a spy. And every day he was a new person. Today he was a pilot. Tomorrow he was a spy, working at a car dealership, and the next day he was a CEO, and that was part of his job, to infiltrate and become somebody else. And I'm not saying I'm trying to be the pretender, but I think the best and easiest way, or not easy, but the best way from a design process and getting into that level of experience is to really engage and put your whole mind, at least, into that project. And that takes a bit of, it takes a bit of beyond skill. It probably also takes a bit of yourself out of you, because you need to, if you do a dentist office, try and really understand what does a dentist do every day? What is the dentist like? And what's the patient like? So it's not just obviously the one side, it's all those sides, the administration person. So every space, small, bigger, from a smallest matrix of little rooms right up to the biggest space. How does that person drive in every day? If we turn left instead of right, would that have irritated that person? I mean, that's a bit too much, but sometimes that is definitely literally part of that design process. So it's really just getting, full body and mind almost into projects, and then absorbing as much as you can from those clients, and making them part of that journey, because that's the only way you can get that information out of them too, which is, if I can say that in a direct way, but it's really just being there in the moment too with them, and taking as much information and pump it into your head, gather as much. With that as an extra layer, I myself love history and site understanding. So getting a good idea of the site, if it's a building related project, the history of that site, and then getting that context and using that as inspiration for the project too. So client wouldn't even sometimes know that their house, if it's a house or whatever, they wouldn't even know sometimes the shape of that roof was actually what they were inspired by the pineapple factory that used to be down the road 100 years ago. So creating that strength and context into everything we do. So there's a reason for everything we do. The shape of the roof, the size of the room, the height of the desk. There's a reason for all of that. So I hope that whenever I get any of those questions afterwards or during a project, we have a reason for those decisions.
Yeah, it's we've had many good conversations over the years about some of these things, and I always love picking your brains about what you're working on, or just I think how you see the world's very fascinating, and the way that you implement that into your work is really interesting. When obviously you've got to balance the client's desires or what they want, but they're relying on you to bring some fresh perspective to what you're building as well. Let's say a residential home. How do you balance? I guess you'll just have a particular way a particular type of thing that you like to create. You've got maybe a bit of more freedom to design something, and they're relying on you to have the freedom to do that. How do you go building something that stands out and that maybe is a glass or a concrete box, compared to integrating something into the natural environment, and maybe with the way that people really like to do things sustainably these days? Do you lean a particular way, or do you?
Yeah, so budget always plays the first or one of the bigger roles. So, and you were touching on at the start, so clients' wish lists are always beyond their budget. That's a natural thing. So just even understanding what normal, natural, or what most of us how we operate as human beings. Trying to understand that already helps to deal with those decisions, because every decision, especially right from the start, obviously plays a role right through. So somebody walks in there and have a specific budget, but their wish list is, I already know, or from my experience and just life, it's 2 or 3 times more than their budget. It's sort of trying to deal with that as soon as possible, and trying to get onto it and be that. And it's a balance of working with them right through. You don't want to crush their souls too all at the same time. So it's working with that. I don't know. It's a balance between. It's a balance. That's probably the biggest word to use. And use as much as you can to your availability. So ask a question if you don't know it. None of us know everything. So if it's if you come up with and test what you do. Test what you do. So if you think you're going to do a 6-meter cantilever, I'm just saying stupid things now. Is that even possible? So before you even put it on a piece of paper, that you quickly call your builder friend or your engineer friend and just, hey mate, I've got this crazy idea. Is it even possible, or is this adding another zero to the budget and or to the project? But I'm a bit of sidetracking. But at the end of the day, it's a balance. It's a balance. It's a. I always say it's literally. I talk about cooking today. Maybe I'm hungry, but it's like you're making a cake. So you got these ingredients. So you take the wish list of the client. You take their ideas and inspirations. You take your skills and your ability. You take the legislative measures, the construction methods and ideologies of your region. You take that site. You take all those things and you throw it and you mix it up. And you should come out with a balanced cake, if that was what you were making. Not easy. Never get it right. It's an experiment sort of every day. And that's the risk that comes with being experimental, trying to push boundaries in our world. Somebody explained it to me a while ago, and it made it much more sense. If Ford designing a new car, they'll probably design it. Some old school fella would probably carve it out of a piece of clay, the first one. And they'll probably do another 100 of them out of different pieces of clay. And then they'll test it through computer systems and simulations. And then they'll build a mock-up, and then they'll build 400 more mock-ups, and then they'll eventually push out this new vehicle onto our roads. Unfortunately, or fortunately, or that's not even words, in an experimental building world, your first prototype is that project. There's the first clay one you did is literally, that's it. That's a final product. So there's no thousands of prototypes and testing. You might be testing a little bit of ideas along with previous projects, and hopefully you learn from those and you keep that in the memory bank. But there's that level of experiment. If that's the nature, and that's our nature, that's my nature, to always experiment and try and push boundaries, stay within the limits, but we'll still, and ask questions and rethink and question everything. That's pretty much sometimes what we do. Literally question everything. Why do we have what is a bedroom? Why does it have flush 90-degree for walls? Why? Why? Why is a bed not built in? Why do we steer away from bunk beds? Or go on and on. But all those questions sometimes lead to interesting solutions. Yeah.
Great questions. The discussion we had when we were looking at a space together, I remember you talking about the number of seats in that place, and how one day you had a revelation in the home. I think you didn't have any children at the time.
No, it was scary. Yeah.
And how many seats there were compared to how many people were in the home. And I guess our homes, on average, the square meterage is getting larger, but the average family size is getting smaller.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you balance space?
Why are we doing that? Yeah. I look at my wife, grew up 3 kids. There were 3 daughters, sisters, 3-bedroom home, 1 bathroom. Life went great for them, and they all had a great upbringing. But you're right now, because we, in my mind, most and all of us as more younger generations have it much better than our folks had it. So now we're striving for all our kids have their own bedrooms and plus another rumpus room and a playroom and so forth and so forth. So you're right. So we just our homes in general are growing, and then ironically the members in our houses are getting less. It's interesting. That revelation was when we counted all our dining room chairs, living room, just even the breakfast nook chairs, and I think we had 24 seating opportunities in our house for 2 people. And thinking 99% of the year, it's just the 2 of us at that stage in that house, and beyond the visit from somebody, a barbecue or whatever now and then. But for 99% of the year, it's 2 of us with 24 opportunities to sit down. Being conscious of our footprint on the world, the cost, money, recycling, all those fancy and bigger words. We should be going smaller, not bigger, and rethink how we do things, rethink how we use spaces. And there is this little revolution in that world. It's a minor amount of people, but obviously there's a range of people that maybe they realize it for different reasons. Maybe it's a lot of times it's also financial, obviously, or space. And then here in Central Queensland and Rocky and Yeppoon, it might be not our biggest problem, space, but obviously if we're in an apartment in the middle of the CBD or in a very expensive part of a city, we might only have 200 square meters to build on, and not the typical suburban 800 or 1,200 square meters. So we should start thinking about it now, because that literally affects every moment of our days. Our repayments back to the big banks, cleaning those homes. We're spending extra an hour a week cleaning those spaces, which we could have done something with our kids. And we can go on and on, Yep.
And I think the discussion we had around that as well was, just because you need X amount of space now doesn't mean you always will. So it's trying to incorporate long-term thinking into design.
Yeah, again, as I touched on before, long-term, living for today, or you're living for in the future. And if you live today, you're going to literally just act on what you need today. But if you consider 10 years from now, 20 years from now, generations from now, it changes the way you do everything, not just design. How do you eat? How do you grow food? Everything gets changed by your mindset. And it's been shown all over the world when the wrong people, how people harvest, or even I'm talking now again about food, nothing in my industry, but anyway, food. Are you looking after the land you're growing things on, or are you just plumaging it for this season and then sit back and then sit there and just take it all in, or are you preparing for the next season and 10 years season from 10 years from now? Yep.
We could get off track and talk about soil quality and how many good harvests we have left ahead of us, but that could be another discussion. It is interesting, and I think just being thoughtful about the things we're doing is important, and you obviously do that in your work. You touched on people being considerate of budget and space. With the current, I think there's another whole discussion around people's expectations and how they might need to change. But right now, we're living in a cost of living crisis, in a housing crisis.
Yep.
And coming on the back of the pandemic as well has kind of caused people to think differently about how and where they live.
Yeah.
With work. And work.
Yeah.
Has that, like you said, there was already a little cult, tiny houses kind of design thing. Has that pushed more people into that bracket?
I would say so. And even the interest into the ability to talk about it has become more relevant. I think people are more thinking about it, where before they were just ignoring it or not even trying to comprehend it. And we're still way off from that, in Australia especially, in all regional Australia, we're still way off it. And it's not just us as the public thinking about it, it's also our legislative and our governments, how they act on it. Do they incentivize us for doing it? Probably no. Does the town planning, codes allow us to really do it? I will probably also say no. So there's a lot of layers there's a whole culture that has to really change in a way. And sometimes, I want to say bad things sometimes have to happen for good things to start being thought about. So you need sometimes those crises and people unfortunately staying in their cars for somebody in all layers of life to wake up and start doing something about it. Because our system is not set up for it, right from the top. Yeah.
I met a guy a few years ago who came through town. He was looking at investing in another project, but he was selling a product that reinforced concrete. And he said part of the issue was, I think it was almost like a little, I can't even think of what the little metal spike thing that I think is part of some game that kids play or something, but just think of like a little metal spiky, like a ball with metal things coming off. And it was some sort of looking metal object like that reinforced concrete, and all you had to do was mix it into the concrete, and it was substantially as strong or stronger than traditional concrete reinforcing methods, but the legislation and what had been proven to build a bridge, it has to meet these specifications, and his product was kind of falling outside of that. Yet the design elements and implications of this product were like mind-blowing in what you could start to do with even concrete, which you think of quite linear in its process. It was very interesting to hear about how he was kind of just waiting for legislation to be updated.
But it didn't suit the mold of our life, so that you can't then use it or enforce it or,
like you said, traditional, engineering or design or, legal requirements around what you need to meet in those standards. It was falling outside of that. So is that sometimes something you're waiting for? That's your process, is having to go and check if you can legally even build the thing that you want to build in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, our beyond even the products, because that's obviously all materials, the techniques, and then even literally the type of space or size of it, or it's something that there's thousands of variations and options and of all of that, and you can go into that butterfly effect too of, if I do this in this size, well, then it affects actually the room next door and the space and beyond that, and even the thickness of that wall. Let's say that fellow with his concrete reinforcing, all of a sudden, if it was a concrete wall, that wall would have been thinner because of the way the enforcing assisted it, and it didn't have to be that thick. That also affects everything else. But every day we talk to our certifiers and call up suppliers and builders and lean on favors with friends and engineering friends or any specialist to almost every day now. And I don't think about it. Somehow ask the question: is this possible? Is that possible? Is that? And as relationships get you through that too. And then sometimes you just have to give up. So it's frustrating, but it's you hit your head against that concrete wall a couple of times, and nothing gives in, and you thought about everything you could, and somewhere that is it. But unfortunately, and that's a balance too. And the other thing too is, I think in all our industries, that's something relevant. You also need to know, and in the design world, you need to design and come up with things that is relevant to your area and your the abilities in your area. So in my world, in the construction world, we can only design also what our builders can build in our local areas, or as much as we can push them to build something. So it doesn't help we come up with some new age, let's say hemp reinforced concrete technology, but the only person who can do it is in the Netherlands. That doesn't help us too. So that's a very big offshore example, but it is literally things to also consider is the people that work with you beyond you, and as part of your process, what do they do and what's their abilities, and can you also push them along a bit and push their boundaries and their abilities, but also knowing how much you could push them. The decisions you make day one is maybe only day 100 when they come into play. So knowing that day one decisions somehow needs to already have that balance by the time you get to day 100. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming those things don't change very fast either.
No, and the mentality of somebody just has been doing something for 30 years or 20 years or 10 years even, or 5 years, they're very used to their 10 or 5 year or 20 year way of doing it. But again, I think sort finds sort. Even you and me chatting about different things in life. It's you sort of also create your own little world of sort of people, and it doesn't mean, and definitely none of all these people are the same world as you always. But if there's 100 builders to choose from, or 100 accountants to choose from, the 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 that needs to be part of your world, I think over time you obviously would have sort of the ones that's part of, at least has some level of similar thoughts and process and culture as you, would hopefully start working more together and have better synergy together to achieve sometimes something better, or sometimes even the impossible. That's a big word. Yeah.
When I watch a movie or a TV show with my wife, I'm thinking about the way this is created. How did they do that shot, the story, the color grading, the lighting? I'm fascinated by how they create these things, and it will often ruin it, because I'll see something, and the most basic thing, I'm getting off track, but the pet peeve for me is a coffee cup, when they've got a coffee cup in the scene and they're waving it around like it's empty. Couldn't you just put water in it to make it seem more realistic?
When they pick up a box and you see there's nothing in that box, but it's supposed to be a heavy box. You can see how easily somebody picks it up and put it down. And
I just think, in terms of making things, I'd happily be the person paid to be on a movie set to make things seem more realistic, like just critically looking at things to make to feel more realistic.
Gravity again.
Yeah, that's it. Gravity exists, and we know that. We know that. So anyway, that's just a pet peeve. When you walk in...
Didn't they get that wrong when they did the moon landing? I'm just joking, but when the flight, when the flag was, there was seemingly the flag was waving, it's a whole different other conversation, isn't it?
Yeah,
Was the moon landing real? That's what I was getting to.
Well, I have a theory about that, which I need to do some more research on.
Anyway, I've tracked you.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're getting to, is like when I walk into a space, or in any space, do I look at everything or be critical about everything? You
drive down the street, see a building that's just been built and go, just
why?
cringe.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, you do that, but unfortunately, yes, you do that, and I think we all do that in all our worlds and our speciality. But hoping you can also see the good in everything, and even the ones that has a cringe when you see them. But I try and see the best in everything, or at least some little part of something that makes sense, or that hopefully inspires me somewhere in the future for one of our future projects. So, because and sometimes even that, so it's you cringe. You wonder why. You sometimes almost want to knock a hole through a wall to see why again, and that happens every day. But can you also see that the other side of it?
Yeah. What's some of the work you're most proud of, and why? What was it? Something that went into it? Was it the award that you got? Is it the community that it improved?
Sure. I think for me, I don't think it's it's the smaller things. Yeah, it's the smaller projects. Normally, it's the smaller parts to it. It's never the big ticket item. It's not that award. I think again, that little ego in us always wants to have that little bit of recognition in life, because unfortunately, we don't always get that. And I think there's a lot of industries that you don't always get there's no reward really, even though you think there should be a reward. Even just a pat on the back doesn't always happen. And that's part of, same as saying before about being criticized or getting criticism, getting negative feedback on an artistic type of work. It's, so the reward is not really there, or should be part of it, or be the biggest, or any emphasis on it. It's a stupid example, or maybe a good example, but normally stupid and good sometimes go together, or most of the time actually goes together, is knowing very good friends of ours live on top of Mount Archie and Rocky, and a boardwalk we've built there, 6-7 years ago now, a boardwalk we designed up there, that's a better word. Even today, still creates traffic issues as to the amount of people that go and visit and spend their afternoons on sunsets and picnics and photography and whatever. So good friends of ours still complain today, every day, about the traffic problems for them to get back up the mountain since that boardwalk was built. So the bad traffic problems is probably weirdly the best reward, or some level of tick that we did something right for that specific project. So it's an interesting way to look at it. The problems you cause that actually shows the popularity of spaces, and knowing that you would think that popularity means people are enjoying it, and that's what they're using it, and that's what they dare. Yeah.
Maybe you should have designed the car park as well.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we can't do it all, can we?
What? Yeah, there's a few areas we could go. I think of even shopping centres. You know, there's one in Yeppoon that has a very terribly designed car park. Is there only so much you can do with those, with a certain amount of space? We can sit there and we can be critical.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, there's a terribly designed blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We don't know why they designed it that way.
Yeah.
And we don't know, we haven't thought it through.
Yep.
We don't know if there was no better way.
Yep. Yeah, you need to, there's so much going on in the background of anything we do, any industries again. And we only see the little end, the little top, the last bit of it, the finished product. But what thousands and millions of decisions and effects was in that process again until that end. But then shopping centers is a whole different discussion, and now they maybe be the negative and the opposite of CBD life and community orientated shops and offices and so forth. Yeah, so there's a whole different conversation about shopping centers and what they negatively do to our communities, small communities. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something about that recently with regards to the amount of parking. This is obviously, I think, just in the reflection of people and their the expectations of people to go somewhere and have parking.
Yeah.
That at a shopping center, there's something like at least double the footprint of the shopping center in parking on average at any given shop or retail precinct, which is not a great use of space.
Sort of go back oddly to that short-term way of thinking about life. I want to get out right now, and I want to walk as short as I can into the shop, and so forth, and beyond. So it's all integrates back into that me. Going back to the other conversation, going back to me, and it's being selfish about I want to park as close as possible, and so forth. And I'm not going to take my bicycle or I'm going to walk there, even though I live down the road. Yeah, and all those things. Yeah.
Is it possible to design a car park at a shopping center well? Could you do it?
Ironically, I did. I started my life at shopping centers, and after uni, I think it's always car parking is actually probably some of the biggest problems for any project. Doesn't matter what the project is, even houses, But putting houses apart, the commercial world, the car parking requirements. There's always a requirement. There's always some level of car parking required for 95% of commercial projects, and normally they dictate the rest of the project because they take up, as you said, a certain amount of square meters, certain amount of space, and after you almost have to place them, and then afterwards start the rest of the project. If you have the ability and the money, some people put them underground or up in the air, but at the end of the day, they normally literally dictate a lot, and we normally have to try and work around them or innovatively work with them sometimes, or when you go into a basement or somehow prove to the council that the street car parking is enough, you don't need so many on-site car parkings and so forth. But yeah, and then they're also getting smaller. It's like as our houses are getting bigger, our car parking requirements are getting smaller, and our cars are getting bigger. So with our houses, and how many scrapes and nicks and bumps do we get on our cars these days? And that people have, that's a whole different other conversation again of how people are nicking your car and not leaving you the note like in the young days and being apologetic or trying to make up for it, or rather just run off and jump in their car and try and get away and hope nobody saw them. That's a whole different aspect of selfishness again. It's all connected again.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
So the question of the day, are you hopeful? I guess a cool title for this discussion could be selfish design. No. Hopeful design,
Hopeful, yep. So I grew up obviously in South Africa, probably obvious. for most people. I've had a couple thinking it's the Netherlands, but anyway, let's leave it there. Growing up, I was in an interesting, balanced, erratic life of good family, good parents, good, but with a bit of military background and as family, so there's a bit of discipline there. But then every year, jumping in a caravan family trip and going searching for animals in national parks, lions and elephants, and then with that, having that exposure to many different aspects, and then starting work in those days in a diverse worlds of social housing, informal housing settlements in Africa, working with people with nothing, right up to working with a lot of rich people. So it was there's always this balance, and even coming to Australia, the same sort of essence of being around. So coming back to hopefulness, and this is a longer story too. Is it's the aspect of small, of the small things. The small things. It's never the big things. It's the same about what makes you, or what it makes a project good. It's never, I think, the big things. Always the small things. That's the door open in the right direction, and so forth. And being, and then coming to a more life sense of the world, all about our lives. It's all those small things again, isn't it? Is my kids happy that I try and at least spend a bit of time this morning with them. That I take that moment and breathe in that fresh air before I went to work. I just stood outside before anybody else woke up and just take it in. And as the sun came over the hill, and so that's totally off track there, I feel. But the hopefulness. Do we have hope? Yeah, we've never been in a better position as a human civilization. As bad as our bigger homes are compared to when we grew up, it's also a good indication that we can afford living bigger. And then, as bad as that also is, an economic sense, it shows we are better off. Well, most of us, all of us, are better off. Technology's taken us so far, and that also can be negative again. But if you use it in the right way, you can only be so much better too. There's so much more opportunities for all of us. What we could do. I think my grandfather could only do what his father did, and that was it. There was no choice of the matter. There was no opportunity to go study or to explore or try and something else. We literally have the opportunity to do anything, or even during our lifetime reinvent ourselves if we wanted to, or start again, start fresh. Having two girls at home, one of my biggest aims with them is to try and give them as much of the independence that I want and hope for them, being female and being kids growing up in the society. Not that long ago, they wouldn't have had the rights that they have today. It's funny to say that, but that is true. Not that long ago, how many years that is, they wouldn't have had the rights to do what maybe their counterpart male would have done in their day. So, trying to give them that hope and that inspiration, and that confidence, and that all of us, trying to equip them to be the best human beings and the best they can be, and giving them that joy and hope for them, because I think a lot of people run through life negative from the start, because I feel like some of the parents and us as parents, sometimes we put that into our kids to be negative. Everything is a problem. Everything is a problem. This is not right. That's not right. But if we start thinking about it again, we literally into the parent conversation now. But we literally decide, and we can spend that little moments every day with them, and the little sand grain amounts of hopefully more creating positiveness. Being realistic about life. It's not all this magical, fairy tale, and then boom, we dropped them out at 18 and off they go, and they found reality. So give them that reality, but having them think positively of how they would, and the problems will come, but when that problem is there, how will we, or how will they react to it? And there's always two ways, isn't it? There's that everything's a problem. I put my head in the sand like an ostrich, or yet be, I know, take a moment, take it in, and deal with it, and communicate and deal with it. And normally in a construction, in a project, in a business world, we have problems every day. There's no good day. I mean, there's good days, but there's no perfect days. Especially being in that sort of a more experimental world, things happen every day. But I've had good relationships with being open with people, trying to not just hide it, don't just push it under the cupboard. Sort it, and also own up to your part in that, whatever happened. So being that also probably somehow relates back to selfishness, or being non-selfish, is being to owning up and being accountable. That's probably a big word, isn't it? But being accountable to whatever you say, whatever you do, and try and live the best way you can to that accountability. So if you say something's black, that's a stupid example, but are you black if you say something was black, or are you the other color, but you're saying it's black? It's a stupid example.
Yeah, taking responsibility is important. And I think just thinking it through. I think, I know that's what you like to do with your projects. Think of the space, the window placements, the materials, the environment that you're building in, the history. Think it through. Thoughtful design.
And then that should be the same we do in life too. Thinking it through, consider it all, and consider other people, because it's not just about you. It's not that the anti of being selfish. So consider the other person. If it's your wife, or your life partner, or your business partner, or the stranger down the road, your world is what is in your head around you. Their world and their head is different. But do you at least want to consider that and try and just slightly imagine their side, however you act with them, and whatever capacity, if it's about purchasing something, or just saying good day, we all have our own little space of our own worlds. Again, all have our own worlds, our spaces and our bubbles around us, and sometimes we get stuck in them and think that is it, but there's so many other, we're all on our own little journeys, and there's that be considerate of other people's journeys. As much as you can, because we all mold each other, or all shape each other. All of us, we're all big rocks. Somebody told me that many years ago. We're all big rocks, and we all literally grind against each other every day, minutely. Every time we pass each other, there's a little bit of a grind, a little bit of a shaping from both sides. And what is that minute shaping of the other person? Was it a good or a bad, shape? And then in that shaping, and maybe literally in a building world, in our work world, our spaces, I would feel and hope we leave behind is we leave a little bit of my stone. That's, if I was a stone, a little bit of my small pebbles of my stone around, where people hopefully would be in those spaces, and hopefully also get a bit of a shape, hopefully in a positive way, from that spaces. So there's a little bit of soul I feel sometimes we leave behind in our projects, because we put so much into it. We think so much about it. So it's part of almost our DNA. We put into a physical form. That's a weird way to say it.
No, not weird at all. That's why I said you're an artist. You're an artist, and that's why you're good at what you do. It's enlightening. I think it'll be cool to see what you create next.
Oh yeah, we all would hope and see that. It's and that community. Maybe the last one on that is the artistry is, it's that combination of working with people, because there's no one person. There should never be one entity in creating. There's no one entity on a human aspect of creating, because it's a combination of a million things. It's a combination of hundreds and tens and sometimes thousands of people together, shaping, creating, similar to those big stones, a lot of stones together, shaping and creating that project.
Colin, thanks for the chat.
Cheers. Thank you.
Awesome.